The sun hung like a tarnished coin in the ash-gray sky as Ethan adjusted his respirator mask and surveyed the ruins before him. 3 years since the collapse, and scavenging had become increasingly dangerous and increasingly necessary. His supplies wouldn't last another week without this excursion. The skeletal remains of what was once a research complex sprawled across the valley floor, twisted metal reaching toward the sky like the fingers of buried giants. Most scavengers avoided this place. Rumors of radiation and worse kept them at bay. But Ethan had learned long ago that fear created opportunity. "Just get in, find what you can, get out," he muttered to himself, the mantra that had kept him alive when so many others had perished. He picked his way through the debris, his boots crunching on broken glass and scorched concrete. The facility had been prestigious once, BioNexus Industries, according to the half-melted sign at the perimeter. Their specialty had been medical technology, which meant potential jackpot items. Medication, preserved supplies, maybe even working tech if he was exceptionally lucky. 4 hours of methodical searching yielded a respectable haul. Antibiotics, some preserved food rations, a few power cells. Ethan was preparing to leave when he heard it, a faint sound like labored breathing coming from beneath a collapsed section of wall. His first instinct was to ignore it. The wasteland rule was simple, mind your own survival. But something made him pause, tilt his head toward the sound. "Hello," he called, immediately regretting breaking his own rule of silence. The breathing quickened, followed by a weak voice. "Help, please." Cursing his curiosity, Ethan moved carefully toward the sound, shifting aside debris until he uncovered her. A woman, bloodied and partially pinned beneath a fallen support beam. Her dark hair was matted with blood, her olive skin ashen from what appeared to be significant blood loss. "Don't move," he instructed, assessing the situation. The beam across her legs wasn't crushing them, just trapping her. "I'm going to get you out." "They'll come back," she whispered, her eyes, an unusual amber color wide with fear. "Who?" Ethan asked, leveraging his weight against the beam. "Doesn't matter, please, just go." The beam shifted with a groan of metal, and she slid free with a pained gasp. Ethan knelt beside her, medical training from his pre-collapse life kicking in as he checked her injuries. Lacerations, bruising, possible fractures, but nothing immediately fatal. "I'm Ethan," he said, applying pressure to a bleeding wound on her arm. "What's your name?" She hesitated, eyes searching his face for something, trust perhaps. "Amara." "Okay, Amara. I have a shelter about 2 miles north. Can you walk if I help you?" "Why would you help me?" Suspicion laced her voice. A fair question. In this world, altruism was usually a fatal flaw. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Maybe I'm tired of only talking to myself." She almost smiled, then winced as he helped her stand. "I can walk." It was slow going. Twice they had to hide from roving scavenger bands. By the time they reached his bunker, a repurposed maintenance station buried in the side of a hill, Amara was barely conscious, leaning heavily against him. Inside, Ethan laid her on his cot and better assessed her injuries under the harsh LED lights powered by his solar array. That's when he noticed it, a strange metallic seam along her forearm where her sleeve had torn away. Not a wound, but something embedded beneath her skin. An implant of some kind, far more sophisticated than the crude medical technology that had been available to the public before the collapse. As he cleaned and bandaged her more conventional wounds, Amara's eyes fluttered open, catching him studying the implant. "What are you?" he asked before he could stop himself. Fear flashed across her face, replaced quickly by resignation. "Someone who should have died in that facility." Her voice was stronger now. "Someone who's brought danger to your door." Ethan should have felt alarm, should have regretted his decision to help her. Instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: curiosity, interest, a break in the monotonous struggle of day-to-day survival. "Rest," he said, pulling a blanket over her. "Whatever you're running from, they won't find us here." She caught his wrist as he turned away, her touch sending an unexpected warmth through him. "Thank you," she whispered, her amber eyes holding his. "But you should know this isn't over." "It never is," Ethan replied, surprising himself with a small smile. "But for now, you're safe." As Amara drifted into an exhausted sleep, Ethan sat watching her, questions multiplying in his mind. Who was she? What was the technology embedded in her body? And who was looking for her? For the first time since the world ended, he found himself thinking beyond tomorrow's survival. Whatever secrets Amara carried, they had awakened something he thought long dead, hope perhaps, or maybe just the dangerous thrill of not being alone. Outside, the wasteland wind howled against his shelter, but inside, watching the steady rise and fall of Amara's chest, Ethan felt a strange sense of purpose taking root. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but tonight, in this moment, he had saved something precious in a world that took everything. And that, he decided, was worth whatever came next. Days melted into one another as Amara recovered in Ethan's underground shelter. The fever that had gripped her the first night finally broke on the third day, leaving her lucid but weak. Ethan changed her bandages with careful hands, trying not to stare at the technological implants visible beneath her torn clothing, metallic lines that traced her forearms and disappeared beneath her collarbone. "You were a doctor," Amara observed as he cleaned a gash on her shoulder. "Before." Ethan's hands paused momentarily. "Combat medic, 2 tours before the collapse." He resumed his work, applying a homemade salve to her wound. "How did you know?" "Your hands." Her amber eyes followed his movements. "They know exactly where to go, what to do. That's not something you learn scavenging." A half-smile lifted one corner of his mouth. "Not much call for battlefield medicine these days. Mostly I patch myself up." "And now me," her voice softened. "Why did you really help me, Ethan?" The question hung between them. Outside, rain began to drum against the metal roof of the shelter, acid rain that would leave burns if you stood in it too long. "Maybe I've seen enough people die," he finally answered, securing her bandage. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Amara reached up, her fingers brushing his stubbled jaw in a touch so gentle it made his breath catch. "And what about these?" he asked, changing the subject as he gestured to the metallic implants along her arm. "BioNexus wasn't just a medical research facility, was it?" Amara withdrew her hand, her expression clouding. "No, it was. More, we were developing human enhancement technology, ways to make the body stronger, more resilient." She looked down at her arm. "I was a researcher, but when the tests on volunteers showed promise, I volunteered myself." "Why?" "Because I believed in it, and because," she hesitated, "because I thought it might save us from what was coming." "The collapse." She nodded. "We saw the signs. Climate degradation accelerating, resource wars spreading. The enhancements were meant to help humans adapt." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Instead, they made me valuable, a resource to be captured and exploited. By the people who attacked the facility." "The collective," her voice hardened. "They want the technology, want to control who gets enhanced and who doesn't, create a new hierarchy with themselves at the top." That night, as the acid rain continued its relentless patter, they shared Ethan's meager dinner of reconstituted protein and dried vegetables. The small space forced proximity, their knees touching as they sat on his cot, the only comfortable surface in the shelter. "Your turn," Amara said, setting aside her empty bowl. "What's your story?" Ethan rarely spoke of his past, but something about Amara made the words come easier. He told her about his military service, about losing his family in the early days of the collapse, about wandering alone until he found this place to call home. "I'm sorry," she whispered when he finished, her hand finding his in the dim light, "for everything you've lost." "Everyone's lost something," he replied, but he didn't pull his hand away. As days passed, Amara's strength returned. She began helping around the shelter, organizing his medical supplies, suggesting improvements to his water filtration system. The small space made avoiding each other impossible. More than once, Ethan found himself pressed against her as they navigated the cramped quarters, each contact sending heat through his body. One evening, as they worked together to patch a leak in the ceiling, Amara lost her balance. Ethan caught her, strong arms wrapping around her waist. They froze, bodies pressed together, breath mingling in the scant space between them. "I haven't," Ethan started, his voice hoarse. "It's been a long time since I've been this close to anyone." "Me too," she whispered, her hands resting on his chest. He could feel her heart racing, matching the tempo of his own. The loneliness of years seemed to crystallize in that moment, a sharp ache that could only be soothed by human connection. Amara leaned forward, her lips brushing his in a question. Ethan answered by pulling her closer, returning the kiss with a hunger that surprised them both. Her body melted against his, soft curves fitting perfectly against the hard planes of his chest. The kiss deepened, years of isolation burning away in the heat between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Ethan pressed his forehead against hers. "This is dangerous," he murmured, though his arms remained around her. "Everything is dangerous now," she replied, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "But this," she kissed him again softly, "this feels like surviving, not just existing." That night they slept side by side on his narrow cot, bodies entwined. Nothing more happened between them, but the simple comfort of another heartbeat nearby was its own kind of intimacy, one neither had experienced since the world fell apart. As dawn broke, Ethan awoke to find Amara watching him, her amber eyes reflecting the soft light filtering through his makeshift curtains. "They'll find me eventually," she said quietly. "The collective, they have ways of tracking the implants." "Then we'll be ready," Ethan replied, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Somehow in the span of days, I had become we. Amara's smile was both sad and hopeful. "I've brought danger to your door." "Maybe," he agreed, his fingers intertwining with hers. "But you've brought something else too." As morning light filled the small shelter, Ethan realized with startling clarity that for the first time since the collapse, he was no longer merely surviving. With Amara beside him, he had found something worth fighting for. The warning came at dawn, a distant rumble like thunder, but in a cloudless sky. Ethan was outside checking his perimeter sensors when he heard it. His blood turned cold as he recognized the sound, transport vehicles, heavy ones, moving fast across the wasteland. "Amara," he burst back into the shelter, finding her already alert, a look of resigned dread on her face. "They've found me," she said simply, already gathering essentials into a pack. "I told you they would." There was no time for recriminations or doubts. In 15 minutes they had packed what they could carry, medical supplies, water purifiers, weapons, and food. Ethan took one last look at the shelter that had been his home for 2 years before sealing the entrance and obscuring it with debris. With luck, the collective would assume they had already fled. "East," Ethan decided, consulting his weathered map. "Through the dead forest and into the mountains. The radiation readings are higher there, might throw off whatever they're using to track you." Amara nodded, her face set with determination. "I'm sorry to drag you into this." He surprised her by taking her hand, squeezing it briefly. "You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this." The moment stretched between them, weighted with unspoken emotions. They moved swiftly across terrain Ethan knew well, staying low and using the ruined landscape for cover. By midday, the sounds of pursuit had faded, but they didn't slow their pace. The dead forest loomed ahead, hectares of blackened trees, their skeletal branches reaching toward the sky like desperate supplicants. "We shouldn't linger here," Amara warned as they entered the forest. "The radiation isn't immediately dangerous, but prolonged exposure." "We'll pass through before nightfall," Ethan replied, though the forest stretched farther than they could travel in half a day. Some risks were worth taking. As dusk approached, the weather shifted. Green-tinged clouds rolled in from the west, harbingers of a radiation storm. Such storms were lethal. The rain carried particles that could burn skin on contact and cause radiation poisoning within minutes of exposure. "We need shelter. Now," Ethan said, scanning the darkening landscape. They found it just as the first drops began to fall, an old emergency bunker, the kind that had been built by the wealthy before the collapse. The door was partially blocked by debris, but they managed to force it open enough to squeeze through. Inside was musty darkness. Ethan's flashlight revealed a small space, perhaps 10 feet square, with shelves of long-expired supplies and a single cot. "Home sweet home," he muttered, securing the door behind them as the storm intensified outside, rain hammering against the metal roof. They would be trapped for hours, possibly a day if the storm was severe. Ethan set up a small chemical light, casting the bunker in a soft blue glow. In its light, Amara looked ethereal, her amber eyes luminous, her dark hair falling in waves around her face. "You're starring," she said softly, a small smile playing at her lips. "Sorry," he didn't look away. "It's just, in another life we might have met differently. I might have asked you for coffee, taken you to dinner." "I would have said yes," she replied, closing the distance between them. "In that other life." Her hands found his shoulders, sliding up to cup his face. "But we're in this life, this moment." When their lips met, it wasn't the tentative exploration of their first kiss. This was hunger, need, the desperate affirmation of being alive in a world that wanted them dead. Ethan's arms encircled her waist, pulling her against him as if he could absorb her into himself. Amara responded with equal fervor, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body arching against his. The thin layers of their clothing did little to disguise the heat between them. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily, hearts racing in tandem. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice thick with desire, "I want." "Are you sure?" he asked, his forehead resting against hers. In answer, she began to undo the closures of her jacket, letting it fall open to reveal the simple tank beneath. The metallic implants along her collarbone caught the blue light, shimmering like embedded stars. "I'm sure," she said, taking his hand and placing it over her heart. "I want to feel something real in this broken world." Outside, the storm raged, but within the small bunker, they created their own tempest. Clothing was discarded piece by piece, each revelation of skin met with reverent touches and heated kisses. Ethan traced the line of implants along her body with his lips, feeling her shiver beneath him. "You're beautiful," he murmured against her skin. "All of you." In the narrow confines of the cot, they came together with a tenderness that belied their desperation. Each touch was both a question and an answer, each gasp and murmur a conversation without words. The technological enhancements that had made Amara a target seemed to heighten her sensitivity. She responded to his lightest touch with trembling pleasure. Time lost meaning as they moved together, finding a rhythm as old as humanity itself. When release finally came, it washed over them like a cleansing fire, burning away the fear and uncertainty, if only for a moment. After they lay tangled together on the cot, her head on his chest, his arms around her. The storm continued outside, but it seemed distant now, irrelevant to the small world they had created within these walls. "I never expected to find this," Amara said quietly, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "Not after everything." "What?" Ethan asked, his hand gently stroking her hair. "Connection, someone who sees me, all of me, and isn't afraid." He kissed her forehead, inhaling the scent of her. "I am afraid," he admitted, "not of you, of losing this, of losing you." She raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. "Then we fight to keep it, together." As they drifted into sleep, wrapped in each other's warmth, Ethan realized that for the first time since the collapse, he was thinking about the future, not just surviving tomorrow, but building something beyond it, something with Amara. The radiation storm raged through the night and into the morning. When it finally subsided, they emerged cautiously from their shelter, back into a hostile world. But something had changed. The wasteland looked the same, bleak, dangerous, unforgiving, but Ethan no longer felt alone in it. As they continued their journey east, toward the mountains that might offer both danger and sanctuary, Ethan reached for Amara's hand. Their fingers intertwined, and in that simple connection was a promise. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The mountain pass opened to reveal a valley sheltered from the harsh winds that scoured the wasteland. Here, impossibly, patches of green dotted the landscape, stubborn life reasserting itself despite everything. Ethan and Amara paused at the ridge, hands clasped as they took in the unexpected vista. "It's beautiful," Amara whispered, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile scene. A week had passed since they'd fled Ethan's shelter, a week of hard travel, constant vigilance, and stolen moments of intimacy in whatever safe havens they could find. The collective seemed to have lost their trail after the radiation storm, but neither of them believed the reprieve would last. "Someone's cultivating that land," Ethan observed, pointing to the orderly rows visible in the valley's center. "There are people here." They approached cautiously, weapons ready. Survivors this far from the major ruins were rare, and not all were friendly. As they drew closer, they spotted the sentries, two figures on a makeshift watchtower constructed from salvaged metal. "That's far enough," called a voice. A woman stepped forward, rifle aimed steadily at them. "State your business." "We're just passing through," Ethan replied, his hands visible. "Looking for safe passage." The woman studied them, her weathered face revealing nothing. "You're running from something." "Isn't everyone?" Amara responded. Something in her words seemed to resonate with the woman. She lowered her rifle slightly. "I'm Valerie. This is Haven." She gestured to the settlement behind her, a collection of structures, some built from salvage, others converted from pre-collapse buildings. We might have room for 2 more if you're willing to work and follow our rules. Ethan and Amara exchanged a glance. They hadn't discussed staying anywhere permanently, but the promise of safety, even temporary, was tempting. We'd be grateful, Ethan said. Haven proved to be more than its name suggested. Nearly 100 people had built a community here, complete with sustainable agriculture, water reclamation, and a rudimentary power system. They were assigned a small cabin on the settlement's edge, 1 room with a bed, table, and wood stove. After weeks of running, it felt like unimaginable luxury. That night, they made love slowly, savoring the privacy and security of 4 walls and a locked door. Amara straddled Ethan on the bed, her body illuminated by moonlight streaming through the cabin's single window. As she moved above him, her head thrown back in pleasure, the metallic implants along her body caught the silver light. "You're like something from another world," Ethan murmured, his hands on her hips guiding her movements. She leaned down to kiss him deeply, her hair creating a curtain around their faces. "I'm very much of this world," she whispered against his lips. "Just a different part of it than you've known." Their rhythm intensified, the connection between them deepening with each shared gasp and touch. When release came, it was with a sense of completion that left them both trembling and spent. Later, as Amara slept curled against him, Ethan traced the line of an implant along her shoulder blade, wondering at the technology embedded within her. She had been more open about her past since their first night together in the bunker, but he sensed she still kept parts of herself hidden. Days passed, and they integrated into Haven's routines. Ethan's medical knowledge made him valuable to the community, while Amara's scientific background helped improve their agricultural yields. They began to allow themselves to hope for a future here, a life rather than mere survival. But peace, like everything in this world, proved fleeting. It began with whispers. Ethan noticed the change in how some settlers looked at Amara, curiosity becoming suspicion. Someone had noticed her implants while she bathed in the communal springs. "They're afraid of what they don't understand," Amara said when he mentioned it, though concern shadowed her eyes. That night, as they lay intertwined in their bed, skin cooling after another passionate encounter, Amara finally shared her complete truth. "The implants," she began, her finger tracing patterns on his chest. "They're more than enhancements, they're a key." Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, looking into her amber eyes. "A key to what?" "Regeneration." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Not just personal healing, though they do that too. The implants contain information, blueprints, essentially, for rebuilding. Technology, agriculture, medicine, everything humanity needs to recover, encoded and protected within me and others like me." Ethan stared at her, processing this revelation. "That's why the collective wants you. You're not just enhanced, you're a walking archive." She nodded. "We called it the Restoration Protocol. 12 of us were selected, enhanced, and embedded with different parts of the knowledge base. The idea was that if the worst happened, if society collapsed completely, we could help rebuild, but in a controlled way, making sure the same mistakes weren't repeated." "Are there others like you out there?" "I don't know," she admitted. "We were separated when the facility fell. I've been running ever since." Her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Does this change things between us?" Ethan pulled her close, his arms encircling her. "Only in that I understand better what I'm fighting for." Their embrace deepened, bodies seeking the familiar comfort of each other. As passion reignited between them, Ethan's touch was more reverent than ever, tracing the technological lines that marked her as both miracle and target. The following day, Haven's council requested a meeting with them. In the community hall, Valerie and 5 other leaders sat facing them across a table made from salvaged wood. "We've had reports," Valerie began without preamble, "about technological implants, about you being different." Her eyes fixed on Amara. "We've survived this long by being cautious." "I'm not a threat to Haven," Amara stated calmly. "Quite the opposite." "Prove it," challenged one of the other council members. Amara hesitated, then slowly rolled up her sleeve, revealing the metallic seams along her forearm. "These contain knowledge, agricultural techniques that could triple your yields, medical procedures that could save lives. I can share this with you." The council's reaction was mixed, interest warring with fear. "And what about those who might come looking for you?" Valerie asked pointedly. This collective you mentioned when you arrived, would they threaten Haven? Before Amara could answer, a sentry burst through the door. Vehicles approaching from the south, armed. Ethan's eyes met Amara's, a silent communication passing between them. The sanctuary they had found was about to be tested, and the choices they made in the coming hours would determine not just their fate, but perhaps the future of Haven itself. As they raced back to their cabin to gather weapons and supplies, Ethan caught Amara's hand, pulling her to a stop. "Whatever happens," he said, his voice intense, "whatever you decide, I'm with you." Her amber eyes shimmered with emotion as she pressed her palm to his cheek. "Together," she agreed. It was both a promise and a battle cry. Outside, the alarm bells began to ring, calling Haven to arms against the approaching threat. The sanctuary had become a battlefield, and the secrets Amara carried were about to be fully revealed. The collective's forces surrounded Haven by nightfall, a dozen armored vehicles forming a perimeter around the settlement. Spotlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across the hastily erected barricades where Haven's defenders crouched with whatever weapons they possessed. In the community hall, chaos had given way to grim determination. Valerie stood before a makeshift map, directing defenders to strategic positions. When Ethan and Amara entered, fully armed and ready for battle, the room fell silent. "They're here for me," Amara stated, stepping forward. "I can end this by surrendering." "No," Ethan's voice was firm as he moved to stand beside her. "That's not an option." Valerie's eyes narrowed. "Why are they so determined to find you?" Amara looked around the room at the faces of people who had, briefly, become her community. "They deserved the truth, all of it. The implants I carry contain data, technological information that could rebuild society. The collective wants to control who has access to that information to create a new world order with themselves at the top." She took a deep breath. "But the implants are more than data storage. They've enhanced me physically, strength, speed, healing. I can fight." Murmurs ran through the gathered crowd. Ethan watched their reactions, the disbelief, the fear, but also, from some, a kindling of hope. "Even if what you say is true," one man challenged, "what can one enhanced person do against their army?" A communication system crackled to life near Valerie, a radio frequency they had intercepted from the collective. "This is Commander Vega of the collective," came a cold, precise voice. "We have no quarrel with your settlement. Surrender the enhanced woman known as Amara and we will leave you in peace. You have 1 hour to comply." Silence fell as the transmission ended. All eyes turned to Amara. "I won't ask you to die for me," she said quietly. "What about living for what you represent?" Ethan countered, addressing the room. "If the collective gets what Amara carries, they'll decide who lives better than others, who gets access to technology, medicine, clean food, and water. Is that the world you want to rebuild?" Valerie studied them both for a long moment before straightening her shoulders. "Haven was built on the principle that everyone deserves a chance at a better future. If we surrender you now, we betray everything we've created here." She turned to the assembled defenders. "We fight." The hour passed with frantic preparations. Under Amara's guidance, they modified their limited weapons and set traps along likely approach routes. Ethan worked with the settlement's few fighters who had combat experience, positioning them where they could do the most good. In a brief moment of quiet, Ethan found Amara standing at the edge of the settlement, looking out at the enemy lights. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. She turned to him, her amber eyes reflecting the distant spotlights. "No, but I am afraid." "Fear keeps you sharp," he said, taking her hand. "Not for myself," she clarified. "For all these people, for you." She stepped closer, her body fitting against his as naturally as if they'd been shaped for each other. "I never expected to find you in this broken world. I never expected to love again." The word hung between them, love spoken aloud for the first time. Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "I love you," he replied, the words simple but carrying the weight of everything they'd experienced together. "Whatever happens tonight, that doesn't change." Their kiss was tender despite the urgency of the moment, a silent promise exchanged in the shadow of coming violence. When they parted, something had shifted between them, a certainty that transcended the chaos around them. "It's time," Valerie called from behind them. The collective's ultimatum expired with a barrage of weapons fire. Haven's defenders responded in kind, the night erupting into chaotic light and sound. Ethan lost sight of Amara in the first moments of the battle as they each took their positions. He fought methodically, his military training guiding his actions as he directed Haven's defenders. But it soon became clear they were outmatched. The collective's forces breached the outer defenses within 20 minutes, their superior weapons cutting through the makeshift barricades. Then Ethan saw her. Amara moved like something not quite human, her enhanced body flowing through the battlefield with deadly grace. Where she went, the collective's forces fell back. The implants along her skin glowed with a faint blue light, pulsing with each exertion. Ethan fought his way toward her, knowing instinctively that she was the key to either their victory or defeat. A collective soldier appeared in his path, weapon raised. Ethan fired first, not stopping to watch the man fall as he pressed forward. They converged at the center of the settlement as the collective launched their final push. Back to back, they faced the approaching forces, Ethan with his rifle, Amara with her enhanced strength, and the small energy weapon she'd kept hidden until now. Together, he asked, a lifetime of meaning in that single word. Together, she confirmed. What happened next would later be described by Haven's survivors as miraculous. Amara's implants blazed with blue fire as she fully activated their capabilities for the first time. A pulse of energy emanated from her, disabling the collective's weapons and vehicles. In the confusion that followed, Haven's defenders seized the advantage, forcing the invaders to retreat. By dawn, it was over. The collective's forces had withdrawn, leaving their damaged equipment behind. Haven had held, bloodied but unbroken. Ethan found Amara sitting alone on the steps of the community hall, exhausted but unharmed. The implants along her skin had returned to their normal metallic sheen. "You never mentioned that particular feature," he said, sitting beside her. A tired smile crossed her face. "It was theoretical, I wasn't sure it would work." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "It's drained now, it will take time to regenerate." "They'll come back," he said, not a question but a certainty. "Yes, and others will follow, once word spreads about what happened here." Valerie approached them, her arm in a makeshift sling, but her eyes clear and determined. "The council has met," she said without preamble. "We want you to stay, both of you. What you carry," she nodded to Amara, "it's important. We can protect it, protect you." Amara and Ethan exchanged a glance, a world of understanding passing between them. "Thank you," Amara said sincerely, "but we can't. Our presence puts Haven at risk, and there's more work to be done." "What work?" Valerie asked. "Finding the others like me," Amara explained. "There are 11 more, each carrying different pieces of the knowledge we need. Together, we can rebuild better than before, not just here, but everywhere." Ethan took her hand, their fingers intertwining. "We've made more than one calculation," he added. "We're talking about tracking all 11 of our people to gather all of the codes so that Amara's brain, so to speak, can release all of the codes and we can build the future." 2 days later, they stood at the edge of Haven, packs filled with supplies freely given by the community they had helped save. The mountains rose before them, beyond which lay the ruins of what had once been the Western Territories. "We might not find them," Ethan said, adjusting his pack. "The others like you." "We might not," Amara agreed, "but we have to try." She turned to face him fully, her amber eyes bright with purpose. "I'm not just running anymore, Ethan. For the first time since the collapse, I'm moving toward something." He pulled her into his arms, the feel of her body against his now as familiar as his own heartbeat. "We're moving toward something," he corrected, before kissing her with a tenderness that belied the harsh world around them. When they broke apart, they began walking, side by side, into the unknown landscape. Behind them, Haven continued its quiet existence, a pocket of humanity persisting against all odds. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the fragile possibility of a better future. As they crested the first ridge, Amara reached for Ethan's hand. Their fingers interlaced, metallic implants against calloused skin, a union of what humanity had been and what it might become. "Together," she said softly. "Together," he echoed, as they faced the horizon where the ruins of yesterday met the promise of tomorrow. In a world that had lost everything, they had found each other. And in that discovery lay the seed of something greater than mere survival, the chance to rebuild, to love, to hope again. It was enough, it was everything,